Thank you for downloading this podcast from the British Theatre Guide. For more information about British Theatre Guide, please visit britishtheatreguide.info. The latest production from Manchester-based new writing theatre company Box of Tricks is Under 3 Moons by Daniel Kanaber, a play about close male friendship told through the characters of Mike and Paul across 3 decades, from a school trip to France as teenagers, to a surf shack in their 20s, to Christmas in their 30s. The play begins a national tour at the end of September 2019 at the Lowry in Salford, but I spoke to Danny and director Adam Quayle during rehearsals at the beginning of September to find out more about the play.
I'm Adam Quayle. I'm one of the artist directors of Box of Tricks, and I'm directing Under 3 Moons.
And I'm Daniel Kanaber, and I wrote Under 3 Moons.
So what's Under 3 Moons about?
So it's a play primarily about male friendship. So we see 2 friends over the course of 20-odd years. There's 3 scenes that are roughly 10 years apart. So you see them at the age of 17, just the start of that friendship. And then you see them about 9 years later, when they're in the mid-20s in quite a different place. And then you see them again when they're in their mid-30s. And it's really about exploring how that central relationship changes over the years and how the dynamic shifts, but also how men relate to each other and how they talk to each other or don't talk to each other, and you know, the kind of the space in between, really.
He talks about it a lot better than I do.
It's your play.
I think I find it really hard talking about things I've written, because I talk about it by writing it, and then afterwards it's like talking about it. I always sound daft, so I'm much happier when he talks about it.
Right. So like some plays like Pinter said, well, if I needed to say anything, I would put it in the script.
He's Pinter, he gets to say that.
Yeah. But it's the same sort of thing. You feel like everything you need to say about it is already there.
I think it's generally... I don't know, most of my writer friends seem to split into 2 camps. There's the people who know what they want to say and they write about that. Yeah. And the people who struggle with something and then write about it to try and work it out. Yeah. I think the former camp can talk about their plays a lot better, because it's kind of, they went in with an intention. Whereas the second one end up mumbling and bumbling, and certainly with this play, not always, but with this play it's a play about inarticulacy, and male emotional but literal inarticulacy as well. And so talking about inarticulacy can make me sound like an absolute pillock. So. But I think it's also, the one thing I would say is, as Ad was saying, it's about the gaps over time, but it's also about how that relationship is needed for men, and the absence of that relationship can change who you are. And there's a lot of, we've been talking rehearsals that, as a kid, oh, don't cry, come on, and the way men are encouraged to behave, and then you perform that role, and then if you keep doing that, not only does it become ingrained, but also you kind of lose parts of yourself that you haven't exercised. And how just even the notion of what it is to be a bloke has changed over that time. Our understanding what it is to be a bloke, and how we all came from a certain place with, parents who behaved a certain way. Not that all parents are the same at all, but an understanding of what that role was to be a parent, and then going on to become a parent and what you want to bring to that now. Right. So it's, lots of circles and cycles.
And the play focuses on kind of 3 particularly interesting moments in time, because the first scene is in the 90s, the second in the noughties, and the final scene kind of present day. And that shift from that idea of lad culture to metrosexuality to kind of toxic masculinity, and how perceptions of maleness have changed in that time, and what effect that has had on the characters, and how their dynamic, but also the kind of wider societal dynamic as well.
You mentioned toxic masculinity, which has very quickly become a big cliche and has been dealt with a lot in theatre and the media and everywhere. So how do you confront masculinity now in a way that's different and not toxic?
Well, I think the one that we were talking about this, and it's one of the things I really wanted to talk about, is when people talk about toxic masculinity. Basically, I just wanted to write about 2 people trying to be nice and getting it wrong. And it's about men struggling to do the right thing, partly through entitlement, but partly just through being confused young men and not having the emotional support networks or the emotional articulacy to be healthy people on their own, let alone healthy friends.
Yeah.
And so it's trying to talk about maleness from, I guess, the inside out, if you want to use that kind of language, rather than talking about the culture, just trying to talk about two people.
Yeah, it's very much a relationship-driven piece, and you see these two friends interact in these three scenes, but at the heart of it, it's a platonic love story, really, and that's what kind of drives the play forward. Yeah. And whilst the societal influences and everything else that are present and kind of informs how they interact, really, it's not a play that's how do we tackle toxic masculinity? How do we? It's actually more just showing the repercussions of the choices that we make as a society, I suppose.
Yeah, so it's a close male relationship over many years that's not based on violence, or it's not based on any of the things that have become cliches about male friendships.
I love a lot of those sort of plays that brought to mind. I love Mammoth, I love Neil the Boot stuff. Well, not all of it, but a large chunk of it. This isn't that, and it's maleness and male relationships have been talked about more than enough. I totally accept that, but I don't often see the complications of just people trying, that struggle to try and grow.
And what does tenderness look like for in a male friendship? What does reaching out look like? What does intimacy look like, that doesn't have kind of a sexual connotation, but it is just two friends, and why is it so difficult for men to express themselves in that way, and what's the cost of that, I suppose, is the kind of the question of the play.
They came partly from just being jealous of some of my female friends' relationships and just going, that would be great. And why don't I have that? And some of it is what
are those barriers and why are they there?
Why do I have them? Why do my friends have them?
Clearly it comes from personal experience on some level, probably a personal experience that all three of us share and probably many others. So how far does that extend, the personal experience? How much of this comes from your life then?
I think I've tried to sort of say it's that thing of it's some of the individual events you sort of go, nab that. That's useful. But I think everything's kind of, this is going to sound really pretentious, but it's only because it's the only way I can kind of explain what I mean. I remember reading George Eliot, and I think it was Mill on the Floss, and they was talking about, and then reading a biography about her, and it was like everything in that book happened, but then just not that way. Sort of thing. And so it just, that kind of an event you've lived over. So something you kind of go, so I'm familiar with that kind of experience. What would happen if these characters had that? Because frankly, they're more interesting than me. And they sort of play about me would be really shy. So this is just much... so I kind of wanted to be able to know what I was talking about, but also see more interesting things through that prism.
And what's really interesting, because when we were talking about the play in the early days after we commissioned it, and throughout the development, there were a lot of moments both Dan and I would be like, the versions of very similar events, or how men interact in a certain scenario, or I've had that experience and did it. And actually, what's been really interesting with Rehearsals is we brought this to younger actors, and actually there is a shared experience even now, and there's a kind of implicit understanding of what it is to operate in the world, or to move through the world as a man, and and some of that is negative, and there is, of course, the things that need to be challenged and everything else, but it's the same battle for me. That men and women are fighting. Really, it's these kind of things that put. No.
I'm not sure.
Let me finish.
Okay, go on.
But actually, the patriarchy, if you want to kind of get into the terminology, is the enemy, not men. Not women. It's actually that we should,
gender constructs.
Exactly.
And some feminists say that men lose out as well as women.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly. And I think that's that's definitely at play. Within this play, that actually they are victims to gender constructs and everything else. And it's straight away we're kind of fallen into into kind of language that is, but it's important. I think, to kind of acknowledge that.
It's bound to be seen within that framework at this particular point in history, isn't it?
Also, I think it's related to it as well. There is that thing of this is how do you move forward as men? Because I think it would be it's important to engage in conversation and important to move forward and acknowledge and all these other things. Whilst in some ways it does feel kind of obtuse to write a play about maleness at this point, I feel that's also part of it.
Yeah, we talked about that in the early days, and actually, is this the play that I should be writing at this particular time? And it's actually, yes, because that's exactly why you should be writing this particular play, because it's not, and
it's not, again, it's
not bitter wheat.
It is, but it's also, it's a play, it's important to say, it is a relationship story, it's a platonic love story, and it's not about toxic masculinity, it's just that's kind of the backdrop to it. At the same time, in the same way, it's not about this, but their relationship to women, their relationship to sex, their relationship to their parents and to being a parent. It's all part of that, in the same way that this is all part of the conversation about how we interrelate.
Yeah.
What about the two characters that you've chosen to have this friendship? They have very different backgrounds and trajectories throughout the 20 years of the play, don't they?
Yeah.
So what made you choose those characteristics of those characters?
To be honest, they largely came through. I mean, it's not a long play. It's about an hour. Yeah. I think we must have written about 5 hours of material. Particularly, we always knew where it started, and it went in a bunch of different ways and all the rest. And largely their character, their history, all of it came just through writing and discarding what never fit. Yeah. And it did. It's
like a distillation process, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'd love to be one of those people who knows, but it's be less work. But it was, But it was finding the story, and the story found the character, sort of thing. So it wasn't a choice of. And it's weird because retrospect, looking at it now, if I was smarter, I could have gone, these are obviously the more interesting way to tell the story. They've got enough in common, but enough apart. So there is a slight. I don't totally want to talk about it too much because give stuff away.
But I think it's safe to say. I don't think do stop me. But they are quite different characters from the outside. Yeah. They've got different energies and different priorities. But actually, that's quite surface level. And as soon as you kind of scratch the surface, and this is what they discover over the course of the play, so that they've got more.
Is they both have a similar need, and it's that male.
But then that's not enough.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
You've set quite a challenge for your two young actors, though, as well. They're playing the same characters over 20 years. So how have you confronted that in the rehearsal?
It's very early days at the moment, so we haven't got any answers yet. But I suppose
it's easy to get that wrong, though, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is, and I think what we've been talking about already is it's not about trying to play a certain age. It's about telling the truth of that character in that moment at that point in time. And I always find it quite difficult when you hear kind of just an actor kind of just put on a young voice and then and play down very obviously. I think it's about identifying that truth, and it's also, I think, what's really interesting, what we're exploring at the moment, is the transitions between each scene and how do you convey time passing in a kind of where you avoid kind of like the cliche of the montage of the passing years and the points that they've seen each other. It's actually how do you
music
exactly. How do you distill that into something that's more engaging, more interesting, more expressionistic, rather than something that's kind of a literal interpretation of it? And because that for me is how you evoke it for the theatre, rather than through like you would on film, perhaps.
I think it's also the bugger for the actors is showing the passing of time, but that they are the same person. Yeah, and that's it, and again, in real life, it's totally obvious. You look at a photo of yourself at different points in your life, you hold yourself differently, and you can tell. Oh, I was happy there. I was, and you can I look back at photos. Go, Blumenau was playing a lot of sport then, and really not now. And you can, and it's about how do you hold yourself differently, but carry that through line as well.
Yeah, and it's that versions of ourselves, and I look back on younger versions of myself, and they, on one level, they do feel like a different character. Talk about in the context of the play, but on another level, there is very much that kind of through line.
You should say as well. This is, I mean, if if someone handed you the script, you wouldn't actually go, "Oh, movement director," but because it's two people talking on a stage.
Yeah.
But from day dot, Luke's been in, and it's been a really interesting experience having throughout the process having a movement director, because it is about how they hold themselves, what energy they bring to it, and that has been really great.
Yeah, I'm conscious of it. I hold myself differently now. I did 10 years ago, certainly. When you pass 50, knees start making noises. You make that noise when you bend down. But everything you've said about the actors, it applies to the writing as well. You've still got to have that consistency. You're writing the same character, but with the differences of being 10 or 20 years older.
Yeah.
So was that an issue for you?
It was certainly something to have in mind. It was part of the fun of it. And there definitely were, going through it, you'll find like an odd line or more than that, it's more an odd word where you've betrayed yourself and you sort of go, no, maybe not. But it's interesting because it is, we were talking about like music or the way people dress. Often when you watch like period films and stuff, it's sort of every item of clothing came from the 1950s and that 1950s.
Yes,
Well, no one went shopping yesterday. They all went shopping 5 years. So that was how it is. So it is allowing there to be the realistic remnants of the life that came before, but also where they are now in their language, in how they think, and seeing how the way people change how they behave is a gradual thing, and in that moment you can see them question stuff and go, oh, maybe that is antiquated to who I am now, sort of thing.
Yeah, and there's something quite satisfying in these early days rehearsals that you kind of you start to see the little echoes between each scene, the little traits that emerge, that they are quite different, but that fundamentally they're the same. How they react to situations on one level has evolved, but at the same knee-jerk reaction or drive
or
is still
applying
there.
the same impetus in a totally different way. But it's still that.
What draws these two characters to be friends and to stay as friends? I don't know about you, but I've had different friends at different stages in my life, and there aren't many. But hardly any, in fact, that I've been consistently friendly with over 20 years. So why do they stick together when they're very different characters from what I read about?
I'm quite different so my partner has lots of big groups, and she's really good at maintaining groups, and that's her. It's a superpower. But I've got like pockets, and they're not necessarily individual friendships. They're kind of 2 or 3 group, and we sort of hang out there. And the ones that stick about are either the ones where you feel really safe, I kind of remind you a little bit of who you are, want to be, were, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then there are the other people who are it's kind of compulsive. There's something, either because they are way smarter than you and just say interesting shit and you want to hear it, or they can be kind of obnoxious with that, but you put up with it because it's hit to hear it. Or you've got the friends who are just funny and you have a good night, and then you might outgrow that, but then sometimes you want to dip in every once in a while, so it's about coming back to it. And I think that's kind of the middle ground between these two of, whilst their lives are very different, whilst there's people, they are very different, there's a certain, in this, we're talking about maleness, but there's a certain safeness, a certain, I see you, I recognise you, it's okay to be vulnerable here, and a kind of a compulsive, being with you, it gives me something I don't get elsewhere. And it's about what they need, what they get, and why they need that safety.
And that it's not always... It's a really quite complex relationship, because we've talked a lot in rehearsals and in the design and everything about orbiting, and it's like there's this, at points they don't necessarily know why they need each other, but they do need each other. It's the complexities of human relationships.
And it's that the bits where they're struggling to express themselves and then realising what they're trying to express isn't necessarily what they need to express anyway, sort of thing, and that.
So Box of Tricks is a new writing company. That's what you do, what you've been doing for quite a number of years now. Producing new writing is risky, financially and in every other sense, and artistically. So what attracted you to... what did attract you to this particular project? And what stage was it at when you came on board?
So Box Tricks now operates on the basis of a kind of commissioning model. So we believe in playwrights and empowering them to tell the stories that they want to tell. So with the idea of commissioning, we wanted to say, we think you're a brilliant writer, and actually let's go on a journey together. And we go that's from the kind of seed of an idea through to treatment stage, through to first draft, through to development, through to put it on stage. And it's about, for us, it's about giving writers that confidence to go on that journey. Like there's like playwright awards like Bruntwood or Papa Tango, fantastic, and they give incredible opportunities. But it's the play that wins that. Yeah. And actually, we wanted to kind of nurture playwrights and to go on that whole journey. And also, on a personal level, as a director, it's having that creative voice at really quite an early stage, and that it's a shared enterprise rather than, oh, you've written this play. Oh, yeah, I could do that. I'll put it on. And so we commissioned Danny when, because we've worked together on a number of occasions, so we've done lots of short plays together. We did a one-act play which we toured a number of years ago, so it's been a conversation that we've been talking about for a long while, and with the last round of New Tricks, our commissioning model, we started to talk about ideas, and it just blossomed from there. So it was a lot more organic than saying I was drawn to this project, because it's
developed in
in
collaboration.
The one thing I would say as well, the Bruntwood, Verity Bargate, they're amazing. They are really amazing. But generally, again, I might be talking out my hat here, but I know a lot of people. I know some people would say you write a certain play for those, or I would anyway, because you would want to write something that grabs the attention, all this sort of stuff, rather than. And you also have a certain idea of the audience, maybe, or a preconceived notion of it, and that's the wrong way to do it. And they would tell you not to do that, and it is the wrong way to do it. I'm not saying that's what they would want, but I would find it hard to totally push that out my head. Whilst there's something very freeing to just write something with just you as the audience. And I know that's what you're always meant to do, but it's really hard to do that. Whilst just writing something that isn't trying to push ahead of anything else, isn't trying to sort of be seen, it's in that kind of look at me way. Not that's what they would want you to do, not that's what would actually work, but just trying to write something as quiet as we've, one of the things we've been talking about in rehearsals is that too quiet, is that too subtextual sort of thing. But it's been great to write that way around, to rather than sort of try and grab for something, to be really slow with it. It's been really nice.
And you're in rehearsals as well.
Yeah.
The writer's in rehearsals. Yeah. What's it looking like to you at the moment?
I mean, it's really great. I mean, not really. Well, I mean, that sounds right. It's really great to be in rehearsals. Yeah. It's weird because your role is very strange as a writer in rehearsals. Yes. You are. In some ways, you're the reason everyone's there. In other ways, you're a total spare part. And you just sat there going like, you can get in the way. You can be a really useful tool for the actors or certainly if there are mistakes in the script, it's really helpful to go, oh, no, that someone's put, the wheel on the wrong place, we'll move that, blah, blah, blah. But even without that, you can be a useful tool to where did that come from, what's that energy? But most of the time, if you're speaking, it's because you've already done something wrong or you're doing something wrong now by speaking. So it's a very odd role, but it's really great and fun to be here.
Yeah, it's one of those fascinating things about the collaborative process, isn't it? Because it kind of goes from a writer's play to the writer and director, a little gang of two, and then you bring in the actors, and then it's everybody's play for a period, and then when it goes out on the road, on tour, and I feel like I've left it. It's the actors' play again. Do you know what I mean? And it's those different stages, which is what's beautiful about the collaborative process. But it is it's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's really. It's the handover bits are always the scary bits because you're just going, be nice.
And so what happens to this collaboration from here? Do you keep working together?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the way that we work as a company is that we constantly looking for new talent, and actually we see that as a big part of our role is to keep bringing fresh blood into the company. But we also, like we have with Dan, keep coming back to the same writers that we've got that relationship with. Like Lizzie Nunnery and Becky Presswich and Dan, and the stable of writers that we love having in the room.
It's also really nice being. You turn up to do something with Box Tricks, and then you go like, Becky Presswich is doing one. Lizzie Nunnery's doing one. Sean Owen's doing one. You kind of go like, oh, well, I'm not, to be in a room with those guys, you go, I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
It's really nice company to be in. I love their stuff. So
justifies
really,
you putting writer on your passport.
Well, it makes you go, I really better put some work in, because you don't want to be the one who drops the ball. But it's really, it's a nice to have that relationship. When you see they have relationships with other writers like that, you feel good about yourself for that, which is nice.
Yeah. But you're doing other things as well. It's not just Box of Tricks. So what else have you got?
At the moment, I'm doing a bit of film stuff just because theatre is lovely, but I've got a mortgage, so I'm doing that. After this, though, I've got 2 film things that are kind of halfway through, a thriller and a horror movie. And then, but after this, I generally only have, and it's probably again the wrong way to do it, I generally only am writing one play at a time, just because it's a very different process writing a play to screen stuff. And I kind of can't have my head totally in them. So now this is kind of going to rehearsals as much as the handover is happening. It's also my chance to start trawling around for what the next play will be, and I've not got a clue yet. But
the trolling is started.
The trolling is beginning.
And what else is Box of Tricks doing at the moment?
So next up, we're planning to do a non-theatre tour, like we did with Chip Shop Chips, called Last Quiz Night on Earth. The premise of which
it sounds like pubs.
Yeah, so it's kind of pubs and found spaces, but it's the premise is that a meteorite's about to hit the Earth, and they're going to have a quiz night, and why not? So yeah,
it's a quiz night with extra jeopardy.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that'll be a fun one. And then we're developing a musical, our first ever musical, with Sean Owen, and it's an indie musical that's set in the 90s, set in a nightclub, and it's exploring female friendship and finding your tribe. Really. Right. So that's what next year's currently looking at. And as talked before, we're hoping to bring Sparkplug back as well. So watch this space.
Right. Under 3 Moons by Daniel Kanaber, directed by Adam Quayle for Box of Tricks, will open at the Lowry in Salford from the 24th to the 28th of September 2019, before touring to Lawrence Batley Theatr in Huddersfield, Unity Theatr in Liverpool, Crewe Lyceum Theatr, Hull Truck Theatr, Carriageworks Theatre in Leeds, the Arts Centre at Edgehill University in Ormskirk, York Theatre Royal, Live Theatre in Newcastle, Theatr Clwyd in Mould, finishing at Rosehill Theatre in Whitehaven on the 2nd of November. For more information, see www.boxoftrickstheatre.co.uk. You've been listening to a podcast from British Theatre Guide. For more information, please visit britishtheatreguide.info.